First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the press for coming out this afternoon. I'd like to introduce the people participating in this press conference. My name is John Morganelli, District Attorney for Northampton County. To my left is First Deputy District Attorney Terry Hauk, and I'm joined by Inspector Daniel Reagan of the Easton Police Department and Lieutenant Matt Gerald of the Easton Police Department. And we're here to discuss a little bit about the matter involving a homicide that occurred on March 11, 2015. And after an investigation conducted by Easton Police over the course of the time since March 11th, today criminal charges have been filed, additional charges I might add. These are charges filed against Jeffrey Scott Knoble. The charges today are a general count of criminal homicide, a robbery charge, as well as a charge of a former convict not to own or possess a firearm. Essentially, I'm going to give a very brief overview, and then I'm going to turn this over to First Deputy District Attorney Terrence Hauk, who will be actually handling the prosecution of this case, and also to the Easton police officials who have much more detailed information regarding the circumstances of this matter. But essentially, very briefly, on or about March 11th, 2015, at approximately 8:30 a.m., Easton Police Department spoke with a Lori Knoble. She had indicated that on earlier this date at approximately 6:30 a.m. or 7 a.m., her son, Jeffrey Knoble Jr., called claiming that he was in a car of a person that he had shot. He also told her that he needed clothing and was coming to her house. Knoble failed to appear, and so Mrs. Knoble left the premises. Lori Knoble stated that as she was driving on Northampton Street at around 7:30 to 7:45 a.m., she located Jeffrey at 10th and Northampton Streets. She said he got into her vehicle and mentioned that they were safe now and that he had, quote, shot and killed someone. He then showed her allegedly a video which he displayed on his cell phone. The video depicted the face of her son, Jeffrey Knoble Jr., in a room. She also stated that the video depicted the body of a nude black male, thin-build, tall, lanky, lying face down on a bed in the corner of the room. She further described blood on around this unknown male. Mrs. Knoble went on to state that Jeffrey told her that he had stripped the male and shot him in the head. Lori stated that she became scared of her son and dropped him off down on 4th Street and Northampton Streets and notified the police. From that time forward, Easton Police were involved in looking for this individual, and later that afternoon there was an incident that occurred at 1318 Liberty Street when Easton Police went to that location. That was the residence of Lori Knoble. At that time they believed that Mr. Knoble was inside. The Special Response Unit of the Police Department was at the scene, and after discussing and talking with Mr. Knoble for a period of time, he was taken into custody at approximately 3:15 p.m. that afternoon. Police, of course, conducted a search of that residence and, among other things, located a cell phone, actually 2 cell phones. One was a white Samsung S5 cell phone. The other was a black cell phone, and as well as a semi-automatic .40 caliber gun. Subsequent investigation then occurred by the police department. Later that evening at around 5:45 p.m., the same date, information came into Easton Police from an individual who was concerned about a friend that she had not seen for a while named Andrew White. Apparently Mr. White was last known to have gone to the Quality Inn Motel in downtown Easton, and as a result, shortly thereafter, Easton Police determined that there was a deceased male, black male, later identified as Andrew White, in room 418 of the Quality Inn. It appeared that he had sustained a gunshot, and obviously thereafter there was an autopsy that was performed, and the coroner's office did determine this to be a gunshot wound to the head and ruled the matter to be a homicide. Easton Police had Mr. White in custody, and there was various charges, which I'll let the officers talk about, that were related to the standoff that occurred at the house, and also some threats that were made by Knoble. So since that time, the investigation has been moving forward. That included a fact that there has been preliminary information developed that the ballistics recovered from the scene at the Quality Inn, along with the gun that was recovered at the residence, seems to indicate that there's a match as this being the weapon that inflicted the fatal injury to Mr. White. There's been further investigation which has resulted in today these charges being filed at the district judge. As I indicated, and I'm going to let Mr. Houck and the police answer questions and add anything that I've overlooked on this, particularly perhaps describing some of the information that was developed at the residence. Mr. Houck will be handling this case. It will probably be a first-degree murder case, but I'll let him address that as we move forward in the process. At this time, I'd like to turn over to Mr. Houck or Easton Police to add anything to that summary that you'd like to. Inspector Reagan, this is your case.
We would just like to add one thing. Obviously, there was a lapse in time from when Mr. Knoble left the hotel until we took him into police custody, approximately 3:15 that afternoon. Several hours did elapse. If there's anybody out there who he spoke with, whether it was in person or by telephone, we're encouraging you to call the police department. We would like to find out what, if anything, he said, or perhaps if he disposed of additional evidence through anybody else. We would like to have contact, and they can call 610-250-6635 to provide us with that information.
All right. Mr. Houck.
Any questions? Do you have any questions?
And first of all, did these two know each other? Or we're talking about Mr. Knoble and Mr. White. Do we know if there's a connection that they knew each other? There's been some reports that maybe he was offering help to Knoble or something like that.
You'll see in the affidavit of probable cause that they were known to one another. And yes, we believe that Mr. White was not involved in any criminal activity, that he was merely trying to help out a friend. And that's indicated within the affidavit of probable cause, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Was Mr. Knoble known to police?
Certainly.
How about Mr. White?
No, he was not.
When we look at this, you guys have done a couple more raids and connected some other lines. Can you talk about more? Was this more of a gang shooting, or do we know more about what the cause was on this?
I'm not going to speak specifically with respect to motive. The affidavit and criminal complaint speak for itself.
From our perspective, Mr. Knoble's connection with the gangs. If you're asking that specifically, did he have any kind of connections with gang? We have indications that he had some gang affiliations or gang ties. That continues to be under investigation. We have no such information whatsoever with respect to Mr. White, nor do we think that Mr. White was killed involved in any kind of reciprocal gang type of thing. Now, if this defendant Knoble allegedly killed this individual for his own reasons that had to do with gangs, that still remains under investigation. But Mr. White would have had no knowledge of that whatsoever. We have no evidence whatsoever that he had anything to do with any gang at all. Just the opposite. He was just, as Inspector Reagan has said, all he was trying to do from our investigation was trying to help a guy out and have a place for a guy that was on the streets to stay for a night.
Did Mr. White get Mr. Knoble this room, or
Yeah.
do we know what's going, something like that?
That is our evidence at this point in time. Yes.
So that's room 418 was taken out by Mr. White?
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Houck or any of the officers here?
Do you guys have any sense, I know there was charges filed against Mr. Emmons in Forbes Township regarding some weapons charges. Do we have any sense of what his connection is, if any, with this actual homicide investigation?
That remains under investigation at this point, but we're getting there. Yes.
Is there any indication anybody else was present in the hotel?
We have no indication of that. No. Not at this time. Not at this time.
Were you guys able to recover the videos and all this other stuff from the phone? I know that there was a question that maybe some of it wasn't recovered.
We have recovered video footage. At this point in time, we're still collecting stuff, so we're not at liberty to say exactly what we have.
So has Knoble said he's done this, or I mean, during you guys'
Yeah, we're not going to comment
investigation?
on any statement that he gave at this time.
Do you
Is it
have
qu-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have a sense of when Mr. White was killed as far as the time of death?
Yeah, according to the complaint, we have it between, give me 1 second, between the hours of 5:14 a.m. and 11:25 a.m.
Is he cooperating with authorities? Can you say that at
Who?
least? Mr. Knoble?
No, I can't say at this point in time. I mean, I'm not quite sure what that means, but I mean, he's been placed under arrest, or is about to be placed under arrest.
Terry, robbery is an aggravating circumstance.
It
Is
is.
this going to be a death penalty case?
We haven't decided that yet. What that will be determined at a later date, probably prior to the arraignment or at the time of arraignment.
When will Mr. Knoble be arraigned for this? Already, or is he going too soon?
After we leave here today.
Gentlemen, just for our benefit, I'm sorry, could you spell your names for me, please, so we get them right for our editors?
Terry?
Terrence, T-E-R-E-N-C-E. Last name is Houck, H-O-U-C-K.
It's John Morganelli, Morganelli.
Insert.
Daniel, last name Regan, R-E-A-G-A-N.
Thank you very much.
All right, any, no further questions? Thanks very, yeah, Riley?
I had a question, and I'm sorry if I missed this. He said to his mother that he'd stripped the victim and then shot him in the head. How
That's-
exactly did that happen?
That's the statement from his mother.
Yeah, no, but what's the narrative in terms of when how he shoots him? What exactly do you believe happened in that hotel room?
What, the evidence that we have is that the victim was shot one time in the back of the head. And he was found belly down on the bed in room 418.
Is there any indication why he stripped the victim?
No, not at this time. That remains under investigation.
And the robbery is for the clothing or?
Clothing and a cell phone at this time.
How did Mr. White come to know Mr. Knoble? You said they were friends. Friends from high school, there's an age disparity there. How did they?
I believe they said he was acquainted at this point in time. I'm not at liberty to say the extent of that. That remains under investigation.
By any chance, is there a domestic angle to this between Mr. White and Mr. Knoble?
No evidence of that whatsoever. No evidence of that whatsoever.
And it appears, and I think based on the information that I have received from Mr. Houck and from Easton investigators, is that this victim, was relatively well regarded in the community, well liked in the community, and appears, at least at this point, and we have no evidence to contradict it, that was trying to be a good Samaritan and actually trying to help someone here.
Correct.
So it's a real tragic in that respect.
Noble's mom indicated that he was having trouble with his girlfriend, and she thought that might have set all of this off. Do you have any thoughts on that, or is that
No.
coming out of this?
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.